What is the biggest mistake you did not make as a teenager? Story 1. Sending nudes. Found out the boys in our school had a shared email. They all had the password to where they passed around all of the nudes they got. Found out 2 of the guys I talked to who asked me for them were a part of that group. So glad I never took nudes or sent them. Story 2. Girl at a nearby HS sent a video of herself to her boyfriend. This was when recording and sharing videos by phone was relatively new. They broke up shortly after and, of course, he shared it with other people. Parents complained she shouldn't be captain of cheerleading squad anymore. Story made the newspaper. I don't know how it all played out, but I'm sure it was a nightmare for her dealing with all that. Story 3. I was at a house party and I wasn't drunk at all. I was late to the party and had only just started. This absolute 10/10 girl came on to me and wanted to take me upstairs to suck and fuck. But I cannot tell you how drunk she was. I really would have wanted to under any other circumstance, but the fact she was so drunk just put me really all at ease, and I said no, and she started calling me an arsehole and that I was a cunt, etc. About a week later she added me on Facebook and apologized for calling me names and thanked me for not taking advantage of the situation. Story 4. In HS I was pretty an extrovert, so in my friend group I always had the invites to parties for us either in town or within a town over. So one night my buddy's cousin was turning 21. That sounded like the perfect party for H-schoolers to crash. Once there, the cousin was obliterated drunk, was wandering around getting pictures with everyone so she could see them when she sobered up. After our pic she came on to me. There was no way I would have even if I wasn't friends with her family. So we partied for about an hour or so then left. It turned out she had been coming on to a few guys trying to have some B-day fun, only didn't tell her Russian gangster BF about it, so when he saw someone making out with her, he shot the place up. Like 10+ victims, at the end of the chaos type shot it up. My whorish buddies had thought about going for it, but also wouldn't do it as she was way too sauced up. Dodged literal bullets. Story 5. I had a similar experience, but I was drunk and had no idea if she was. A girl I only kind of knew said she wanted to blow me right now. First, my brain melted down, but I somewhat recovered and said I didn't think I should take advantage. She said a WTF dude ook I guess. I felt like an idiot in the moment and my friends teased me about it, but now I don't regret that at all. First of all, other people saw this happen and I would rather not have everyone talking about some sloppy hookup. Second, and probably more important, I trusted my instincts and I shouldn't feel bad trying to stay safe. Story 6. I was asked out. I said no. He raped and murdered 2 teenage girls that same weekend. Edit. Many of you asked for more details. There honestly isn't much of a story on my end. This was over 30 years ago now. A male friend of mine called me. Steve rapist/murder was with said friend. I was probably 14/15 at the time. Steve got on the phone, started chatting me up and asked me out the coming weekend. I was already dating a boy who was the cousin of Steve's girlfriend Dana. I said no. The weekend 2 days later Steve and another guy picked up a 12 and 13-year-old. Steve raped the 12-year-old and then slit her throat, leaving her to bleed out in his bathtub. He then called out to her friend telling her that the girl he killed needed her. He then killed the other girl. His friend heard a scream, went to investigate, saw what he'd done and went and sat on the front porch. Steve tried to get him to help remove and dispose of the bodies, but he refused. Steve piled them into the back of his pickup and took the friend to dispose of the bodies. Friend still refused to help. Strangely, Steve took his friend home. Friend told his parents and they went to the police. Steve was arrested, charged, and got 2 life sentences. To answer one of the more disturbed questions, no, I did not then, nor have I ever blamed myself. Yes, I believe he likely would have raped/murdered me that weekend if I hadn't said no. But no, I don't have survivor's guilt. And no, he didn't kill these girls because I rejected him. He just wanted to do it. Story 7. Drugs. I thank my aunt for that. She popped pills like they were candy. My grandma was going to pick her up one morning. There was no answer at the door, so she went on in. She was sitting on the love seat leaning down, and my grandma thought she was just high and nodding off. She was cold and stiff and had been gone all night. My granny had a heart attack and could have passed as well. I'll never put my family through that. I know the truth about drugs. If you don't get help, you won't survive. It's a medical certainty. Story 8. Thank you. Some think of 1 or 2 at a time won't do nothing to just make the pain go away and gives me a little floaty feeling, nothing more. I like you had family members who were not only great teachers because they were addicts and showed me and my brother how we didn't want to live our lives. They were addicts for years, one even got sober for 10-11 years, was doing great, had a great job, bought a house, but then her albatross got out of jail and started his shit up. Why do you need to go to meetings? Why can't you have a cocktail after work with me? 10 years flew right out that window. Within 2-4 years of her abusing drugs, her grandson found her odd on the parlor floor. He had to call 911 on her to save her, which he did that time, but no one could save her from herself or the drugs, and they did end up killing her. Story 9. One night in college we couldn't find weed, but my buddy scored some meth, I guess from a bar earlier in the evening. Had never done it. I had the lighter in my hand and the glass to my lips and was starting to cook it. I stopped and said, "This is a bad idea." Set it down and left. One of them is dead now and the other in prison. Granted, I'm a recovering alcoholic myself, so I'm not judging, just saying it may have been the best decision I ever made not to inhale. Story 10. I didn't go to parties until I graduated high school, and I limited how often I drank. I turned down drugs like cocaine because I didn't want to find out if I enjoyed such an expensive habit. I'd often disappoint my friends when I didn't want to get fucked up with them. But they didn't see the effect my father's alcoholism had on my youth. My real boys had my back to tell the rest to fuck off when I wasn't going to drink. Decades later, I rarely drink, and the only addiction I had was World of Warcraft through vanilla/TBC/WAD. LK. Story 11. I didn't impregnate anyone, probably largely due to lack of opportunity. I was a socially awkward, nerdy kid. I didn't drive drunk or even really try drinking until I got to college. I didn't experiment with/get addicted to hard drugs. Did a fair bit of pot in my early 20s though. The funny thing is I was into punk/industrial/ska music, dressed the part, and was kind of a loner except for a few friends. So everyone just assumed I did all those things anyway. Story 12. Using a vape. E-cigarettes were just getting popular as a drug in their own right instead of just a tool to quit smoking when I was in senior year, and at the time were still regarded as safe and non-habit forming by many. By the time I finished college, Juul was practically ubiquitous among people my age. I didn't use vapes because the thought of inhaling smoke of any kind makes my skin crawl a little and it's expensive. Now, we know vaping can in fact cause lung problems, and my old classmates are just as addicted as they would be to any other drug. Story 13. I made sure to get out when I said I would. Growing up, I did a lot of petty crime for money. I sold pot to help pay for my college tuition and groceries, and eventually sold some harder stuff. For a while I stole car parts and things to sell for extra cash. Eventually I got to a point where I realized I could make more money from some credit card fraud than by working. I distinctly remember being 19 and being drunk and strung out at a party and being unhappy. I had enough money to equate a decent living for a 19-year-old if I kept doing what I was doing, and started to feel like finishing school would be too much work. Somewhere along the way I set up a small business selling posters to college students, since the prints were only $1. Perk of being an art major for full glossy poster-sized prints. I sold them for $10 in person and got my roommates to do the same, cutting them in for a portion of the profits their posters made, since I was the one that was generating the foot traffic to sell them. I didn't make much, but it was a moment where I realized I was making money off my art. Doing stupid illegal things may have paid more, but there was no price I could put on the peace of mind of not looking over my shoulder. Eventually I stopped everything that wasn't on the up and up. I used the money I made to help during that transitionary period. Story 14. Never cut class. Didn't date, so never had sex, so by extension never had to deal with pregnancy scares or actual pregnancies. Didn't mess up at all. Never stole from my parents. Never drank. Never smoked, so never had to resort to stealing cigarettes. And never did any drugs. Yeah, I was a little goody two-shoes loser. Story 15. I didn't get a Confederate flag tattoo. Born and raised in the South. super conservative Christian family. I was taught the lies of how it's about heritage and not the right to own people like property. When I was 15, I really wanted a Confederate flag tattoo to show I was proud of the South. 9 years later, my only tattoo I have currently is a reference to my favorite poet, and I live in Massachusetts. I haven't visited my home state or the South in general since 2017, and I'm ashamed of the things I was taught and believed. I'm a better person now.